guys, so today I thought it would be fun to take a little trip down memory lane and talk about some of the books or series that I read because of Booktube. So I haven't had my channel for too long, but I've been watching Booktube since back in high school. I loved hearing the recommendations and just listening to other people talk about the books that I was also reading. It was such a cool and fun experience for me, and so I thought that I would share some of the best books that I read because of Booktube. So I made a list of the top 10 books or series that I read because of Booktuber recommendations. So I will go ahead and jump on into that. So I thought that I would count down on this list, so I'm going to start off at the number 10 spot and build up all the way to number 1, which will be my top pick that I have read because of Booktube. So starting off at the number 10 spot, I have Rules for Vanishing by Kate Alice Marshall. So I read this book because 3 booktubers here on Booktube have a book club called 3 Blondes and a Book, and those 3 booktubers are Kaylin from Kaylin Abridged, Zoe from Zoe Reads, and Liv from Liv's Library. And I am fans of all of their channels, and so when I heard they were doing a book club together, I was really excited about it. So I picked up this first book that they picked, and I didn't really know what to think about it. I had never heard of this book, and so I was really excited to read something that I never really heard much about. And I will say this book was spooky. So this follows Sarah, and Sarah's sister went missing, and Sarah thinks that it's because she decided to play the game from Lucy Gallows, which is like this tale in their town that you can go into the woods and Lucy Gallows will take you to play her game. And not many people believe it, but Sarah's convinced that that's how her sister went missing. So a text goes around the school asking people to play the game, and some people think it's Sarah just kind of messing with people, but Sarah knows that it wasn't her, and she decides that she is going to play that game to find her sister. And so a group of people go with her, and they enter the forest, and they play the game. This is a YA book, so I think that I was just not expecting it to be super creepy and scary, but I read a lot before bed, and there were many times where I had to just put the book down and play on my phone so I could actually get to sleep, because there were just some really creepy parts in this book, and maybe I'm just a wimp, but I thought that this book was actually really scary, and so I liked it nonetheless. This would be a great book to read around like Halloween if you're looking for a spooky read, but it is one I would definitely recommend. I've never read anything like it before. It's definitely interesting. It's definitely creepy. I mean, it takes place in a forest at night. That is just creepy in itself. So I would definitely recommend this one. Coming in at the number 9 spot is Nevermore by Jessica Townsend. So I have only read the first book in this series, but I definitely want to continue on with it. So this is a middle grade series, and it follows our main character Morgan, and she's considered a cursed child because she was born on an unlucky day, and everything that goes on in the town that's unlucky or bad, she is blamed for. She's supposed to die on her 12th birthday, which is on Eventide, which is the day she was born, but Eventide comes early, and so she is going to die basically until she's whisked away by a man named Jupiter North, and he takes her to a magical little place called Nevermore, and she competes in these trials to be a part of the Wondrous Society. And I don't really know what to say about this book other than that it was just so whimsical and fun, and I loved it. I would have not picked this up without hearing so many great things about it from different people here on Booktube. I just kind of never really venture off into my middle grade section of my bookstore, and so one day I decided to, because I'd heard so many good things about this, and I picked it up, and I'm glad I did. It makes me think that I should take a lot more middle grade recommendations, because usually I just kind of, brush them off. I don't really think much about it, but oh my gosh, I loved Nevermore. It was so cute. So I would highly recommend this one, especially if you are kind of iffy about going into middle grade like I was, because I just didn't think it would be something I would be super into, but oh my gosh, I loved it. So next up, I have Eleanor Park by Rainbow Rowell. So I'll be honest, I don't remember too much about this story, but I had to put it on the list because I picked this up exclusively because I heard people talking about it. So I know it seems kind of silly that I don't remember much about it, and it's at the number 8 spot on my list, but I just remember reading it and really loving it and really feeling connected to the characters. And so it's definitely one that I want to reread so I can, you know, have the memory of reading it again, because there's a lot of things I do remember from it, like certain scenes with Eleanor Park, but there are also a lot of things I don't remember, oddly enough. And so I definitely want to pick this one up again, as you should as well. So at number 7, I have another book by Rainbow Rowell, and that is Pumpkinheads. And I don't own this one either. I just borrowed it from my library, but this follows 2 kids that work at a pumpkin patch, and I read this back in October before Halloween, and it just gave me all the fall vibes. But another reason I wanted to include this is because it was actually the first graphic novel that I read, which is kind of interesting because maybe you don't think of 2 kids working at a pumpkin patch as the typical graphic novel that one would read, but I really loved it. They are just nice quick reads. They're fun. At least I had fun with Pumpkinheads. But I would really recommend it if you are just looking for just a cutesy little fall read. I know it's not fall right now, but if you are looking for a fall read come fall, I would definitely recommend that one. But also it really I think it was a really great first graphic novel for me to read because it wasn't too complex. It was a simple story, and it kind of eased me into the world of reading graphic novels. So I would be interested in reading more. I haven't yet, but if you guys have any good graphic novels or anything that you would like to recommend, definitely let me know. Next up, I have another spooky read, and that was Lock Every Door by Riley Sager. So I had never heard of this book until people started talking about it on Booktube, and it was, oh my goodness, it was so good. So this follows a girl named Jules, and she is just really down on her luck. She lost her job, her boyfriend broke up with her, and she is just not thriving. And she finds an ad in the paper for an apartment sitter, and they are willing to pay her, I believe it was $12,000 to live in this beautiful old apartment for like 3 or 4 months. And so she's obviously like, yeah, I get paid to live somewhere, and not only is it just anywhere, it's this beautiful gothic apartment complex where these really wealthy people live. Like, obviously I want to do that. And so she decides to apply, and she finds out that there are some weird rules. She's not allowed to have people stay the night. She's not allowed to stay the night somewhere else. She has to spend every night in this apartment alone, and it's definitely creepy. Another apartment sitter goes missing, and so she thinks that there's just some weird things happening to the apartment sitters and in this apartment. And I loved this book, but man, was it spooky. It's a thrill, it really is. And I read this again around fall, and so I was looking for those spooky time vibes, and I just really loved this. I actually loved it so much. I borrowed it from the library because it was one of the first thrillers that I really read. I get kind of comfortable in certain genres, and just recently I've kind of tried to branch out more, and so this thriller was one where I tried to branch out, and I absolutely loved it so much that I read it, and then I bought the physical book because I needed it on my shelf. I loved it so much. I do want to reread it. I recommend it to so many people. when they are looking for either a thriller or just something that would keep their interest if they're easily bored in books, because this was not boring at all to me. I really loved it. The ending, I had no idea. I did not guess that. I mean, there's some people in the book where like you might know their motives, but oh man, I just loved this so much. So highly, 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 highly recommend this. Next up, I'm going to be talking about an author rather than like a series or just a book, but that is Cassandra Clare. So I finally decided to read all of Cassandra Clare's books because I read City of Bones a while back, and for some reason I just never finished that series, never continued with anything. And I always see people, they get her new books and start her new series and they are just so excited to make videos, and I just always felt so left out because I was like, man, I can't just start on the last book in this series or start a new series when I don't know any of the characters. And so I caved, and I am glad I did. Oh my gosh, her world that she builds, the Shadowhunter world, is so cool. And her characters, oh my gosh, her characters are so good. I absolutely love them. I am just so amazed that I didn't continue on after City of Bones, because you would think that I would have just been so immersed and just continued on, and I didn't. But I'm reading them currently in publication order, so I'm about halfway through The Mortal Instruments, and then I just finished Clockwork Prince, so I'm like 2/3 of the way into The Infernal Devices, and I've been loving them. I would definitely recommend, if you are a little nervous to start her books, because there are, oh my gosh, there's so many, but they are so good. So I would definitely recommend doing that if you are kind of on the fence about it. And then if you need any more convincing, I will just say Will Herondale. We'll leave it at that. He is one of the best characters I have ever read about. I love him. He is sarcastic, he's funny. I just love her characters so much. They're so good. And I also didn't think that I would like these books as much because I just turned 25, so I didn't know if I would like the older books as much, because a lot of people who do love her books read those back in high school. But I don't know about you guys, but I have been loving them regardless. So take it from me, I would definitely recommend just doing it. Pick up the books and let me know what you think if you do. At the number 4 spot, I have another book that I read at the library, and then I loved it so much that I just ordered it, but it has not come in yet, so I do not have the lovely physical book to hold up. But that book is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This follows Evelyn, and she is this well-known actress, and she is also well known for having 7 husbands, and she hasn't really spoken about her life too much, and she decides that she is going to do a tell-all interview, and she asks this young new reporter Monique to do that for her. And the magazine is confused and Monique is confused because she's not some well-known reporter. She's kind of new on the scene, and so she is so she gets the lucky job to interview Evelyn, and Evelyn just decides to spill her whole life. So this entire book is told from Monique's point of view, and then Evelyn talking about her different husbands in her life. And it was just so fascinating. There wasn't even like one booktuber that I could think of that their recommendation really stood out to me, because it was just recommended by so many people. I was like, what is this? So I am so excited to keep reading more of her books, and pick it up. It's so good. Coming in at number 3, I have my first Christina Lauren book, which was The Unnie Mooners. So I picked this up because Christine recommended it on her channel, and she could not talk more highly about this book. She absolutely loved it, and she recommended going into it blind, so that's exactly what I did. She said she didn't read the synopsis, she just picked it up and she read it, and so that is exactly what I did. So when I went to go get this book, I went to Barnes & Noble, and I refused to look at the back. I like picked it up off the shelf and just stared at it like this, and then like put it down on the counter and would not read the back. I didn't want to know a single thing. I didn't read a Goodreads review about it. I heard that Christine liked it and she didn't read the back, so I wanted the same experience. And I don't know if reading the back would have changed anything for me, but I loved it so much. So I am going to give a little synopsis about it, so if you do want to go into it completely blind like I did and like Christine recommended, you can do that. Just skip to where I am not holding this book up. So this follows Olive and Ethan, and they cannot stand each other. So they both have siblings that are getting married to each other, and it starts off at the wedding, and like I said, they're not fans of each other, but they also are the only ones who don't eat the food at the wedding because Olive's allergic to seafood and Ethan does not do buffets. That being said, they're the only two that don't get sick from this seafood buffet. So their siblings have this big honeymoon planned, and they can't switch the days, and they want it, so they're not really out money, but they don't want to be out this huge vacation. And so her sister tells her that her and Ethan should go because they're their siblings and they don't want this huge thing to go to waste. And so they end up going on this honeymoon, and they have to pretend to be the two newlyweds because since they won this, they can't give it away to anybody either. So they have to pretend to be married, and it's two people that absolutely cannot stand each other, and it is just, it was so funny. I really loved it. I loved both of them. I thought that they were both really likable characters, and I just, it was so funny. I mean, I don't know how else to explain it other than like the synopsis of why it's just the funniest thing, because imagine being with someone you absolutely cannot stand and having to pretend to be married to them. That would be not the ideal situation, but I really loved this. It definitely made me interested in reading more Christina Lauren, and I just really loved this. Would highly recommend. In the number 2 spot, I have a series that I just have such good memories with, and that is the Delirium series by Lauren Oliver. So I don't actually own these. I read them on my Kindle, so I don't have the physical books with me, but this follows a girl named Lena, and she lives in a world where love is considered a disease. So when you reach a certain age, you're interviewed and you're matched with someone that you will basically marry and have kids with, but you also will have a surgery done where half of your brain is cut out, and that is so you can't feel love. So a lot of the adults are basically robots. They don't feel anything for their kids and or their loved one. It's such a weird concept to me that love is considered a disease because people have gone crazy in the past. Like, that was just so wild to me. So I remember after every book I read, I would go onto Christine's channel and I would watch her book talk about it, and then I would start the next one. And I will say that the first 2 books do kind of end in a little bit of a cliffhanger. And so they immediately had me wanting the next book in the series. And luckily, since I was reading it on my Kindle, I could just, download it and it would all be good. But I remember after reading the second one, which I think is like the biggest cliffhanger, I was sitting in the living room with my parents and they were watching TV and I was reading, and I read the last little dialogue part and I looked up and I was like, can I please get the third one? You don't understand how this ended. I went into the whole thing and they were like, yeah, go ahead. And so I immediately started reading the third one, and I do not remember the last time a book series just made me want to jump in to the next one that quickly. It was just insane. And so I really, really loved it. I'm not sure if I would love it as much if I read it now, because I was late high school, early college when I read them. So I'm not sure how I'd feel about it if I read it for the first time now, but I did reread them not too long ago and I liked them. So no matter what people say, I will stand firm in my opinion that the Delirium series is good, okay? I would definitely pick them up if you're interested. If it sounds at all interesting to you, I say pick it up. If you don't think it sounds too interesting, then chances are they're not the books for you. But I am so glad I picked it up because of Christine, and she has given me some solid recommendations through my time watching Booktube. So thank you, Christine. So in the number 1 spot, I have the book that I think impacted me the most as a reader, as a person, as everything, and that is The Fault in Our Stars by John Green. I remember seeing this book on YouTube everywhere. So for those of you who don't know, this book follows Hazel, and Hazel is a young girl that was diagnosed with cancer. It follows her story, and she meets a boy named Augustus Waters at support group. I absolutely adore this book with my whole heart. So I read this and I just became a Tifios nut. I loved everything about this book, and I didn't want to stop reading it, so I read it on my Kindle, and then I knew I needed a physical version of it, and so I bought this gray collector's edition, and I just thought it was so beautiful. I think it's like falling apart because I've read it so much. It's just like not in the prettiest condition. For a while, this was my only physical edition, and then I wanted everyone to read it because when I read a book, I force it on everyone. And so I was telling everyone around me, you have to read it, you have to read it. And so I did loan it to someone, and they were just not giving it back to me. And I don't like confrontation, so I was a little afraid to ask for it. But my friend felt bad that this person was not giving this book back to me, and for some reason, instead of us just asking, she went out and bought me another book. And so I was excited because this is the cute original cover, but I was a little sad that I still didn't have my collector's one, so I was like, no, this will not do. So I finally got the guts and I asked for this back, so now I have my 2 lovely versions of this book, and I also have my Kindle version. It led me to read more John Green books. It helped me find, you know, one of my favorite authors and more of my favorite books. I read I would have never read Turtles All the Way Down if I hadn't read The Fault in Our Stars. And so I am just so thankful for this book, for introducing me to this whole world and everything. And so I have Booktube to thank for that. So those were 10 of my favorite books that I have found because of Booktube. If you have any other favorites or any that you also liked on this list, let me know down below. I think it's so cool that people can find their new favorite books because of Booktube. I think Booktube is just so cool. It's so fun, and even though I am a small little channel, I have had the most fun talking about books and talking to new people about books. And so thank you so much for watching and for commenting, whether it's on Instagram or YouTube. It's just the book community is such a cool place. So like I said, thank you so much for watching, and like this video if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you'd like to see more bookish content from me. And I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!